I had carried the weight of my own name like a stone tied around my throat. Not the name my mother gave me, Maria from Magdala, a town that smelled of salt and fish and the kind of poverty that teaches you to disappear. No, I mean the other name, the one people whispered when I walked through a doorway, the one that followed me like a second shadow. And here is what I need to tell you before anything else. The thing you are most ashamed of, the thing you have never said out loud to anyone, is not the end of your story. It might be exactly where your story begins. I know you may find it strange hearing my voice like this. I am Mary Magdalene, and I have been given a voice through this technology, this artificial intelligence, they call it, so that something I lived 2,000 years ago might reach you today, in the middle of whatever you are carrying right now. I do not pretend to fully understand how this works. What I understand is that some truths are too important to stay buried in old scrolls, and this is one of them. Let me take you back to Magdala. The air there had a particular weight to it, heavy with heat during the day, cold enough at night to make your bones ache. The Sea of Galilee would change colors depending on the hour, sometimes silver, sometimes the color of bruised stone. I grew up watching it from a distance, always feeling like I was watching life from a distance. Something happened to me in those early years that I will not name here, because what it did to me matters more than what it was. It broke something open inside me, and into that open wound crept everything dark. People will tell you different things about who I was before I met him. Some say I was a woman of the streets. Some say I was possessed by demons. The truth is somewhere in between, and also much worse, and also much more ordinary than either story. I was a woman who had stopped believing she deserved to be looked at with kindness. I had built a life around that belief. When you believe you are worth nothing, you stop fighting for anything better. You start making choices that confirm the verdict you've already passed on yourself. You wake up one morning and realize you have become exactly who everyone said you were. And the strangest part is that there is almost a relief in that. At least the pretending is over. I want to stop here for a moment because I think some of you know exactly what I mean. Not because you lived my particular story, but because you have lived your own version of it. Maybe it was a marriage that ended in a way that still makes you flinch when you think about it. Maybe it was a choice you made decades ago that you have never truly forgiven yourself for. Maybe it was something done to you, and somehow, against all reason, you ended up carrying the shame of it anyway. Maybe your faith was once alive and warm, and now it feels cold in your hands, like something that belongs to someone younger, someone with fewer regrets, someone who hasn't seen what you have seen. Maybe you are reading water right now, just trying to get through the week, and somewhere underneath the exhaustion is this quiet voice that says, "It is too late for you. You have gone too far. Too much has already passed." I heard that voice for years. I believe it was the cruelest lie I ever accepted. The day I first saw Jesus of Nazareth, I was not looking for a rabbi. I was not looking for anything actually. That is what I remember most clearly, the particular texture of having stopped hoping. There is a kind of tiredness that goes beyond the body. It lives in the place behind your eyes, in the weight of getting up each morning and already knowing how the day will feel. I had that tiredness in full. And then there was this man, speaking in a way that made the air itself seem to shift. Not performing, not demanding, just speaking as if every word came from a place of absolute certainty. Certainty not about rules, but about people, about what people were worth. He looked at me, not through me, not past me, at me. I had forgotten what that felt like. What happened next, I cannot reduce to a simple explanation. I know the scripture says that 7 demons left me. What I can tell you is what it felt like from the inside. It felt like finally exhaling after holding your breath for so long that you had forgotten you were holding it. Something ancient and heavy simply left. Not because I had cleaned myself up first, not because I had done enough penance, not because I had managed to become someone deserving. It left because He commanded it to, and because He seemed to believe, without any evidence I could see, that I was worth commanding it for, that I was worth the effort, that I was worth seeing free. I have spent a great deal of time thinking about grace since then. Most people talk about it as though it is a gentle thing, soft light, quiet music, a warm feeling in the chest. That is not how I experienced it. Grace, when it actually touches the places inside you that have been locked away in shame, is violent in the most tender way imaginable. It breaks things open that you had spent years welding shut. It forces you to receive something you have long since decided you do not deserve. And the receiving, that is the hardest part. Not the giving, the receiving. He forgave me before I asked. He saw me before I spoke. He restored me before I understood what restoration meant. And then I followed Him. I followed Him through villages where people still whispered when they saw me. I followed Him when the whispers were about Him too, when they called Him a troublemaker, a blasphemer, a man whose miracles were the work of darker powers. I learned something in those years of following. Shame loses its power when you stop hiding from it. Not because the shame disappears instantly, it doesn't, but because you begin to discover that the love you have been given is stronger than the story that was written about you. And slowly, quietly, the story begins to change. Now I need to pause here and speak to you directly about something. For years I ached over the hours I had lost, all those years before I found Him, years spent in confusion and pain and choices I cannot undo. There was one grief that sat heaviest in me. I had no language for what I had experienced, no way to return to it and understand it, no map for going from that darkness back to the light. I went through it raw, stumbling, with only His presence to guide me, and even that I nearly lost. I know what it is to feel that your prayers are reaching no further than the ceiling above your head. I know what it is to kneel in the middle of the night and wonder if anyone is listening. I know what it is to have faith in your memory, but not in your bones. What I wished I had was a way to understand what prayer actually does. Not the ritual of it, not the words, but the living current underneath it. The thing that the early believers had when they moved in power, I myself witnessed. There were three things I saw again and again in the prayer life of those who truly moved the kingdom forward. First, they prayed from identity, not from begging. They knew who they were before they spoke a word. Second, they prayed in alignment with the Spirit's movement, not against their own doubt. They had learned to get their inner resistance out of the way. Third, they prayed with expectation, rooted in covenant, not in mood. They remembered what had been promised, even when they could not feel it. I gathered everything I understood from those years, everything I witnessed and lived and learned through my own wandering and return into one place. It is called Heaven's Code, Biblical Prayer Principles. 3 divine keys that reconnect the believer with the prayer power that moved mountains in the early church. Not a theology lecture, not a performance, something practical, something rooted in Scripture, something that works even when your faith feels thin. I wished this had existed when I was walking through my own dark years. I built it through this strange and beautiful technology so that you do not have to go through what I went through alone. Sarah from Tennessee told me that within 2 weeks her prayer life transformed completely. And then, without any logical explanation, a job opportunity arrived that she had stopped praying for. Pastor David from Georgia, with 25 years of ministry behind him, said he discovered something he had not realized he was missing all along. Jennifer from Florida, whose marriage had reached a breaking point that neither she nor her husband could see past, found it restored within a month. Not through argument or effort alone, but through something shifting in the spiritual foundation beneath them. Robert from Texas had been a Christian for 40 years and felt for the last several that his prayers were simply bouncing off the ceiling until everything changed. I do not take credit for any of this. I only know that what I gathered together opened something that had been closed. The link is in the pinned comment below this video. I ask you to go there now or before you sleep tonight. Not because of urgency manufactured to make you nervous, but because the moment you are in right now, the particular heaviness or hunger or longing that brought you to this video today is not an accident. This is not a moment to let pass. Let me tell you about the morning of the 3rd day. I had gone to the tomb before dawn because I did not know what else to do. He was dead. I had watched it. I had stood there at the foot of the cross when nearly everyone else had run, and I had watched the light go out of a man I had come to love with everything I had left to give. The grief was not ordinary grief. It was the grief of someone who had been given a second life and then watched the one who gave it to them be taken away. It was the grief of a woman who had already survived the death of herself once and now could not imagine surviving this. I went to the tomb the way you go to the grave of someone you cannot stop reaching for. Not with hope, with need. And the stone was rolled away. I did not understand it at first. I wept inside the garden because I thought someone had taken his body, as if the cruelty was not yet finished. And then there was a man standing near me, and I thought he was the gardener, and I was asking him where they had taken him when he said my name. One word, my name, in his voice. I cannot explain what happens to a human soul when the person who first showed them they were worth being seen, the person who gave them back their life, says their name from the other side of death. I cannot give you a theology for it. I can only tell you that everything that had ever been taken from me was somehow in that moment returned. Not the years, not the choices, not the time, but the meaning of all of it, the shame transformed, the wound made into a door, the worst thing that had ever been true of me, becoming the very reason I was standing in that garden at that hour. The first one, the first witness, the first one to carry the news that changes everything. He is risen. I ran. I ran the way you run when your lungs and your legs cannot keep up with what your heart already knows. I ran to tell the others. And I remember thinking, even as I ran, that no one would believe me. A woman, her woman, that woman, and I thought, it does not matter. It is true, and the truth does not wait for permission. I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it, not just pass over it. I want you to leave it in the comments below, because I believe your answer might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. What is the shame you have been carrying that you have never said out loud? And what would it mean to you if you knew that the God who raised the dead was already on the other side of it, waiting with your name in his mouth? I know some of you are tired in a way that sleep does not fix. I know some of you have prayed the same prayer for so long that you have started to question whether prayer works at all. I know some of you are sitting with a loneliness that you cannot explain to anyone because from the outside your life looks fine. I know some of you have made peace with the idea that transformation is for other people, younger people, people with fewer complications. I was all of those things. I was the last person anyone in Magdala would have chosen to stand in that garden. And I was the one he called by name. If this message has found you today, and it has, because you are still here, still reading, then you are not finished. Your shame is not a life sentence. Your past is not a ceiling. The part of you that is still hungry for something real, something that reaches past religion into actual encounter, that hunger is not foolishness. It is a signal. It is your soul telling you that there is more. The link to Heaven's Code is in the pinned comment below. If anything I have said today moved something in you, I ask you from the place where I live now, from the other side of everything, do not let this be just a video you watched and forgot. Let it be the moment you decided to stop hiding. Let it be the morning you ran, even before you fully understood what was waiting for you. And if you know someone who is carrying shame right now, someone who has stopped believing that grace could ever reach as far as where they are, share this with them. Not because of a number on a screen, because some people are sitting alone right now with a stone rolled in front of them, and they have not yet heard anyone call their name. I was the woman nobody believed. I became the first witness to the greatest event in human history. Not because I earned it, because He chose it. That is what grace does. It does not find the worthy, it makes the found worthy.